We are, because we said we would in the last episode, and it was in the show notes. But it's the
only
last
now
time we are.
only now you're making it
Only
live.
now, yeah. I just
Oh,
started
good.
it.
Good. Okay.
So our whole conversation has not been
Good.
there.
Okay.
And according to this, nobody's watching, so Chip must be
Hey,
busy.
Chip.
Chip's busy.
I don't think Arsenal are playing today because they've cancelled nearly every football match in the UK because half the teams have got COVID-19. Omicron.
Oh, yeah,
So
they canceled a bunch of NFL games here because I think the Cleveland Browns were going to play the Raiders tomorrow, but 27 of the Cleveland Browns have COVID.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think this is going to be huge. I truly do.
Yeah, I think people are...
Huge crisis.
Yeah. In fact, I saw an article in The Atlantic that said the world is not ready for Omicron.
It's ready for us, though, I tell you.
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay.
I saw another one that said, don't be surprised when you get Omicron.
Yeah. I saw a terrific tweet now a couple of weeks back, which I retweeted. I've forgotten what it was. I wish I'd bookmarked it to use it again and again, of a photo of a made-up. Oh, yeah. It was, that phrase about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger?
Yeah.
This is what it says, what doesn't kill you mutates and comes back.
And then it'll kill you.
That'll kill you. Yeah. Those aren't the exact words, but the word mutate was in there. What doesn't kill you mutates. Yeah. I mean, it was. Yeah.
All right. Are you ready to start recording on your end?
I am. So you just give me the word.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, that's good.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 214 of For Immediate Release, the Hobson and Holtz Report for December 2021. This is Shel Holtz in Concord, California.
And this is Neville Hobson in Thatcham in England.
And this being our December episode, I want to wish everybody a very happy holiday. I hope you're going to have a wonderful Christmas. We've had a wonderful Hanukkah here, but it's all over. And of course, if you're listening to this after the holidays, I hope you had great holidays and a wonderful New Year's Eve. You have any plans for New Year's, Neville?
No, New Year's, no, not. But Christmas and Boxing Day here in the UK, yeah, lots. So it's going to be a nice Christmas, a quiet New Year, I suspect.
We usually go to a concert on New Year's Eve, but there's just nothing playing that we want to see. So we're at loose ends trying to decide if we're just going to stay home. Probably.
Yeah, we will do that. And there's always some really good musical programming on national TV. There's an artist over here called Jules Holland, who really is outstanding, jazz and rhythm and blues in particular, with some terrific guests. So we'll probably watch his live show in New.
Well, given Omicron, it's probably a good idea not to be out with big crowds anyway.
You've got it
now, even when vaccinated, boosted, and masked. So probably just stay home, stay safe.
Yep, exactly.
Wish it were different.
Yeah.
A few items before we jump into the meat of today's show. First of all, there is a new Circle of Fellows podcast episode going up any day now. This was recorded just this past Thursday. Circle of Fellows, of course, being the monthly panel discussion that I moderate with a revolving collection of fellows from the International Association of Business Communicators. The topic this month was how healthy is your organization's culture and what can you do about it? And it was a really, really good discussion. The panelists were Alice Brink, Martha Muzichka, Letty Narvaez, and Mark Schumann. So head on over to the FIR Podcast Network site, firpodcastnetwork.com, to find that episode and all the episodes of Circle of Fellows, and of course, every other podcast that's hosted on the network. And next up, we have some announcements to make about this show, two in particular. And Neville, why don't you talk about the first one?
We're going to ask you, dear listeners, to let us know what you think of the show. So, in other words, a listener survey. The last time we did one of these was in 2013. And we did one prior to that, 2011, and one prior to that, if I recall correctly, 2009. So it's almost a decade since we did. A lot has happened in that decade. When we did the 2013 show, the FIR Podcast Network was still embryonic. And we were regular creators and publishers of some side shows, not meaning they were side shows, but the spin-off shows, if you like, interviews, book reviews and stuff like that. But here we are today in 2021, getting into 2022, and we need to really get a better sense of what you, the listeners, think about the show, what you like, what you don't like, and tell us how you'd like to see it evolving. And, well, evolving is a good word. Sheldon, over to you.
Well, it definitely has evolved and will continue to evolve, which is what we're going to talk about now. But we will be posting, so please watch for a link to the survey. We'll be publishing a post about the survey on the FIR website,
Soon.
the blog, soon.
Hopefully in the coming week.
Right. So keep an eye out for that. We would be very grateful for your input because we already have plans for the evolution of the show, but we are flexible and absolutely want to incorporate ideas that we hear from you. So very grateful for your time and attention to this survey. The other thing that we're doing is I don't want to say we are changing the format of the show.
It's called a pivot, right?
It's a pivot. That's exactly what it is. There are two things, actually three things that are happening. The first is that we are reverting back to calling this the Hobson and Holtz Report. Just a brief history lesson.
Which I've been calling it like that anyway for the past year. But anyway,
that's right. But when we started in 2005, it was for immediate release. And then when we split out book reviews and interviews and the like, we said, okay, this is FIR, the Hobson and Holtz Report. Then we'll have FIR book reviews and FIR interviews. Then you took a job at IBM and departed for a while. So I reverted back to just for immediate release. Then you came back and it was for immediate release because that was the album art that we were using, but it was also the Hobson and Holtz Report. Well, we're going to go back to the Hobson and Holtz Report with the album art, and that's what we're going to call it. We're not going to change the RSS feed because why would we remove all the episodes that we've recorded over the last couple of years? But that's what's going to happen. This is going to be the Hobson and Holtz Report. Along with that change, we're going to change the way we conduct ourselves during the show. You have probably noticed, as we have, that the way these reports are done is that each of us picks three stories that we're going to report on, and then we tell you about the story at great length while the other host sits and listens. And then we have a conversation. And we're tired of that. That's not a lot of fun. The fun is the conversation.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is just introduce the topic and have a conversation about it rather than go through this elaborate narrative to set up the conversation. I don't know that we're going to pull that off in this episode. All of this will start in January.
I was just thinking that. Probably not. Give it a shot, though.
Yeah, we're going to try it with our last story, which is the big one. We're going to be talking about Web3 later in the show. And that's too big a topic to read through everything first. So we're going to make that a conversation. But that'll be the way we do the entire show. So it'll be more interactive and more engaging, both for us and hopefully for you. The third thing we're doing, and this is what I'm really excited about, we used to do this show weekly. For a while, we did it we did it twice a week.
We did.
About a year and a half, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was.
Now we do it monthly, mainly because I'm employed full-time, and we used to do this on a Monday, and that was part of my marketing time. But now I have to do it on a weekend, and my wife got tired of one-day weekends, and frankly, so did I. So we made it monthly, but we miss the ability to talk to you about things that are happening as they're happening. We have a story, for example, that we're going to talk about today, better.com. You're probably familiar with this story. It would have been a lot more fun to talk about it the week that it happened. We're not going to go back to doing a weekly show. I just don't have the time for the preparation, the production. But here's what we're going to do. If we see something in the news that rates a discussion, we're going to set up a time that day or maybe the next day to have a 10-minute conversation about that one topic, and we're going to publish it. And it will be right here in the FIR RSS feed. It'll be in the regular stream of content. So if you're subscribing to this show, you're going to, starting the first week in January, get 2, maybe 3 episodes a week that are no more than 10 minutes in length. And we're going to set a timer to make sure we don't go over 10 minutes. Even if we're in the middle of the conversation, when we hit that 10-minute mark, we're done. And that way we'll be able to cover things that are happening closer to real time and be more relevant and give you short content that doesn't require you to sit for an hour and a half to listen to our flagship show, which will continue.
Exciting times. I mean, that's the short 10-minute segments or recordings are going to be interesting to do those, because one of the things that we both are still learning how to do is talk, and the outcome of the talk is short. So it's hard to do that. But
yes, it's easier to be ponderous, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as you explained quite well, I think the idea of it is timeliness, relevance at the moment, and get our views out there when something has still got everyone's attention. So that will fulfill that need. So hopefully you'll like it. We'll have a question about that, I think, if I recall correctly, in the survey. Now you've heard about it on the show, so you can tell us if you think it's a good idea or not.
And then we'll do a survey again sometime down the road, maybe another 10 years, and ask how it went.
Yeah.
But for me, this is great because it's not a big lift to publish a 10-minute episode. That's not going to take time away from my full-time job. So I'm looking forward to this, and we'll be starting this the first week of January.
Yep.
So it is time now for our final Polite Mail promo. Polite Mail has wrapped up their sponsorship at the end of the fourth quarter. And for this final promo, I thought I'd share a few excerpts from user reviews that I found in various places. Polite Mail adds analytics, responsive HTML design, and list management tools to the enterprise software you already know how to use, that being Microsoft Outlook and Exchange. One review said that Polite Mail adds excellent features to Outlook, helping users to manage and improve their email communications. It provides excellent analysis and insights to Outlook with amazing features, including customer surveys, screen sharing, team management, and mobile optimized emails. Another review says it made our lives easier as business communicators, since we can build and save templates, personalize emails, and schedule send communications. We also really like that we get analytics now so that we can assess the engagement levels of our audience. And the Polite Mail team responds promptly whenever we need support. Another review says it's very easy to create complex and attractive layouts, and after sending the emails, stats are more than any user can think of. And another says, I liked that the team worked so well together to solve my unique problem. The training was clear and made it easy to see how to address my unique challenges. One more, exceptionally helpful people staff Polite Mail. They've created a product that allows you to develop templates, track analytics around your communications, and create a communications cadence that will benefit your organization. We use this to send targeted, personalized communication as well as organization-wide communications campaigns. Now, you could wind up writing a 5-star review too after using Polite Mail. So please go take a look at all that this Outlook plugin can do for your organization at www.politemail.com. And we thank Polite Mail for all of their support over these last several years.
So we should leap into our first story of the last show of 2021. Quite timely, I suppose, Shell. I mean, this is something, I know you're aware of this story. This concerns an executive at Facebook, or should I call it Meta PKA Facebook.
PKA meaning?
Previously known as. So it's quite a serious topic. This executive, Andrew Bosworth, insists that political and COVID-19 misinformation are societal problems rather than issues that have been magnified by social networks. So in other words, all the stuff that is bad that we hear about almost on a daily basis that is focused on Facebook, because that's where it appears, is the fault of the user. It's nothing to do with Facebook. He's quoted a really, really good short interview with Axios. They did a good job of doing this and in how they presented the result of that conversation. To get across Bosworth's approach to this, which I have to say I was kind of nonplussed by the logic behind his statements, and have seen nothing but raised eyebrows and comments everywhere to what he has said. Individual humans are the ones who choose to believe or not believe a thing, he said. They are the ones who choose to share or not share a thing, he added. He's talking about it's their choice. In a sense, they don't have to. They are allowed to do that. You have an issue with those people. You don't have an issue with Facebook, he said. You can't put that on me, he noted. People want that information. I don't believe that the answer is I will deny these people the information they seek and I will enforce my will upon them. At some point, the onus is and should be in any meaningful democracy on the individual. I mean, this is insane. I've got some more stuff I want to link that to. That is very timely, this kind of thing. And there's a counter argument I want to present to this. The whole concept of it's to do with the individual, not the corporation. But your thoughts on what this guy said?
My thoughts are that he doesn't know what he's talking about. I assume this is because he's a hardware guy, and I have to confess that I am a fan of Facebook hardware. I think the Quest 2 is one of the most amazing technological devices I've ever owned. So kudos to him on the hardware side. But his understanding of Facebook's complicity in the issues that we're facing as a society may have gone right over his pointy little head. Clearly, what Facebook is doing, what was revealed in the documentation shared by the whistleblower, what seems to be increasingly evident, is that they're amplifying in ways that society would not be exposed to were it not for Facebook. It's the algorithm that finds out what triggers you and then just piles on bucket loads of that stuff. How would that happen in society were it not for the service that you use having an algorithm that does that? So I think it's just ridiculous. Not a question of denying these people the information they seek, which is what he said. It's a matter of shoving so much of it at them that they're actually not seeking. So, yeah, I think he's absurd.
Yeah, I agree. He's actually amplifying a lot of what Facebook has been saying for quite a long time, and that insists still on this denial of responsibility. And again, I'm not want to put words in his mouth that he didn't say or allude to something that isn't apparent, but it is quite clear that this is all about everyone's responsibility, not just an individual, but also platforms, which kind of makes me or causes me to think a lot about what's happening here in the UK at the moment in this online safety bill that's going through Parliament. That is the first step, according to how I see people talking about it. It may become law in 2022. It could be, as others say, seen as one of the most far-reaching attempts to date to regulate online content, which could have global implications. It's been some years in its development. It has input from lots of people, including that Facebook whistleblower, Frances Haugen, I think her name was, right, who came over to the UK and was part of the discussion with the parliamentary committee that is behind this new online bill. Earlier this week, or a few days ago, in fact, there was an update to the recommendations of the committee on what else should be addressed in this bill. But what I want to do, again, this is directly challenging Mr. Bosworth's statement that the onus is on the individual alone, and that is patently not correct. Listen to this. This is part of the summary of the bill. It's not too long. Self-regulation of online services has failed. While the online world has revolutionized our lives and created many benefits, underlying systems designed to serve as business models based on data harvesting and micro-targeted advertising shape the way we experience it. Algorithms, invisible to the public, decide what we see, hear, and experience. For some service providers, this means valuing the engagement of users at all costs, regardless of what holds their attention. This can result in amplifying the false over the true, the extreme over the considered, and the harmful over the benign. The human cost can be counted in mass murder in Myanmar, in intensive care beds full of unvaccinated COVID-19 patients, in insurrection at the US Capitol, and in teenagers sent down rabbit holes of content promoting self-harm, eating disorders, and suicide. This has happened because for too long the major online service providers have been allowed to regard themselves as neutral platforms which are not responsible for the content that is created and shared by their users. Yet it is these algorithms which have enabled behaviors which would be challenged by the law in the physical world to thrive on the internet. If we do nothing, these problems will only get worse. Our children will pay the heaviest price. This is why the driving force behind the online safety bill is the belief that these companies must be held liable for the systems they have created to make money for themselves. I don't know about you, Shell, but this looks very much to me like companies like Meta, PKA, Facebook bear a heavy responsibility for what users see and engage with on their platform. The onus of responsibility, therefore, is on them, not just the individual. That's what that looks like to me.
So it sounds like to me too. And I'm not the biggest fan of regulation that seems superficially to have an impact on free speech. This has gone beyond that. And even Facebook has said, I'm sorry, Meta, PKA, Facebook, saying that makes me think of the artist formerly known as Prince.
Yeah, right.
They have come right out and said they want regulation. They want to know what the guardrails are so that they can comply with that rather than be left to figure it out themselves. And if they're serious, they should be welcoming this. As I read through the article, it seemed like it's not perfect legislation, but
no, it's
what
not.
Is, and it'll evolve over time.
Right. It's not perfect, and there are critics of it already who say under no circumstances should this be made law because it is so imperfect. And I don't agree with that. It does have issues about some stuff that I understand exercise a lot of people, privacy, free speech, encryption. But these are not, to my mind, certainly not being threatened directly because of this in its current form. I do believe that this will evolve, could be mainly because there are other voices involved in the debate that have power and influence to make sure that some things happen and some don't. And there are other stakeholders who can also contribute to the discussion about this. But I think the overriding element of it is precisely the fact that the current state of how we see things on platforms like Facebook and the terrible things that people do as a result of some of that content they encounter, you can't allow that to go on like this. And I think governments are there for many reasons, one of which is to address things like this with laws. So I see this law very likely to pass. And I think that you mentioned just now, they should do social media platforms should welcome it if they're serious. I don't believe they're serious. I believe Facebook in particular have been mounting a PR offensive in the past few weeks, fielding senior executive spokespeople like this Andrew Bosworth to kind of deflect focus. And we've had Nick Clegg, who was the Deputy Prime Minister in the UK in David Cameron's government, which ended in 2015. In a super interview in the Financial Times these past few days, where the interview took place in Facebook's metaverse. So, of course, that got a lot of attention because of that. I see that as deflection tactics. This is what needs to be done. And I believe that the idea that self-regulation is the way has proven to be patently not the case. They can't do this, otherwise they would have. And we wouldn't be having the focus on some of these terrible things that have happened where content has appeared on a social network, and it usually has been Facebook. So how this is all communicated is going to be quite key. So we're in for I'd say a rocky ride in the next few months as this bill does pass through Parliament, and as some of the requested amendments either get approved or rejected, and then something will emerge at the end of it, and it's likely to become law next year. Don't know what the platforms are going to do, and it's Facebook's in the frame because Twitter, Google, TikTok, any of the others, Google's YouTube, all etc., are not being named in any of the critical commentary. It's all Facebook. And I think we'll see what happens. But to me, it's timely. I have had a few conversations with people I know well, some of whom think it's a disaster this is happening, others who are radically embracing it and think it should have happened earlier. So bumpy ride ahead, I'd say, Shel.
Yeah, and of course it will go through some revision. It won't look at the end of the process the way it looks now. So it'll be interesting to see where it shakes out and whether it's worthy of our continued support. in its final form, but certainly a step in the right direction, especially when you hear the things that people like Bosworth are saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk about something that happened that you may not have heard of as a result of something that I am sure that you have heard of. I expect everyone by now has heard about the events that occurred at the mortgage startup Better.com earlier this month. But in case not, let me just provide the bare bones details. CEO Vishal Garg, G-A-R-G, laid off about 9% of Better.com's workforce, and he did it over Zoom. People thought they were just showing up for another one of his town hall type meetings, but within minutes, he said, if you're on this call, you're part of the unlucky group that is being laid off. Your employment here is terminated effective immediately. And there were employees who said immediately they found that their company phones didn't work and they couldn't get onto the company Slack network. So happy holidays, y'all. As the reason for the layoff, he cited market efficiency, performance, and productivity. He accused these employees of stealing from their coworkers and customers by only working 2 hours a day. Among those that he fired, I found this interesting, was the entire diversity, equity, inclusion recruiting team. There were interviews with employees who were affected by this after it happened. And some of them revealed that they had been recently promoted or gotten sparkling performance reviews, which made those allegations of laziness seem somewhat disingenuous. Employees were kind of accustomed to these outbursts. For example, he sent an email in 2020 to employees that said, "You are too damn slow. You're a bunch of dumb dolphins. So stop it right now. You are embarrassing me," all caps. I've never heard dumb dolphins before. I'm not quite sure what the reference is there. Maybe they don't have opposable thumbs. Go figure. He apologized when this got the tremendous amount of press that it got. He said in a blog post that he failed to show the appropriate amount of respect and appreciation for the individuals who were affected and for their contributions to Better, but wasn't enough to save him. The company's CFO is now managing day-to-day operations as Garg is, quote, taking time off effective immediately, according to an email that the board of directors sent to employees. And you have to wonder if he's ever coming back. The email from the board said the company was taking steps to, quote, build a long-term sustainable and positive culture at Better. They've even hired an outside firm to conduct a culture assessment and make recommendations for improving it. Now, all of this has been widely reported, but there is one outcome from this episode that hasn't gotten as much press. And that's the fact that the company's vice president of communications, its head of public relations, and its head of marketing all resigned after this layoff. And one of the first things I wonder whenever I hear stories like this, and there are sadly too many of them about CEOs going off the rails and saying things that make you wonder, do they even have a communication department? So one of the things I always wonder was the communication team involved in this? Did he ask them for advice and then reject it? Did they actually suggest that this was a good approach? And here, clearly not. These communicators resigned in protest. They haven't been public about it. A couple of the stories that I read about their resignation said that they'd reached out to these folks for comments. They're all available on LinkedIn and the like, and none of them have replied. So this was a private decision. But to me, it demonstrates a tremendous amount of integrity. Especially in doing this in a unified way, the three of them doing it en masse. So I was very pleased to see this. Usually when a CEO does something like this, you wonder if the communications department was involved and why are they still working for this guy? And in this case, they're not. So good on them.
Yeah, extraordinary, I have to say. I was reading that the move to go public with this company has been postponed now. But one thought I had was that if that was still a plan, and they're a $6 billion private company, they need a CEO not like this guy, who fires employees and obviously doesn't command any kind of respect and loyalty within the organization. Mind you, arguably, if there are 9,000 other employees still there, then maybe he does. And you look at it from that point of view. But it's not right the way he did this, without any doubt. And he's not had, you can't say karma's come around and he's affected by it. Not really. If he's just been put on leave to just get him out of the spotlight, he probably needs to go. And reading the TechCrunch piece, they talk about he's got a history with this. And in his previous work, he's had lawsuits from the likes of Goldman Sachs and others alleging misappropriation of millions of dollars of money. That's not a good profile of someone like this who is a leader of an organization about to go public. So I would say that if they are going to go public, they'll get a new CEO for that.
One would hope. And there are other allegations of his being very disrespectful and rude and nasty to individuals. There was an article in Inc. About their hiring this outside consulting firm to do the culture audit. And the author of this said, if the first recommendation isn't to find a new CEO, anything else it might suggest is a waste of time and money. Why? Because culture flows out of the integrity and character of the person at the top. The most important thing you do as a leader isn't setting a strategy or communicating the vision. It's leading people. That's the number one job. Obviously, a CEO with thousands of employees can't directly lead every employee, but they set the tone by their words and their actions. If no one is willing to speak up because they're afraid of the boss's wrath, all kinds of things start to fall through the cracks. Those might be small now, but things tend to accumulate in those cracks, and eventually they become big issues. Quote, we have much work to do, and we hope that everyone can refocus on our customers and support each other to continue to build a great company and a company we can be proud of, the board wrote in its note. That work starts with needing someone at the top who can manage people. And I couldn't agree more. And the fact that he talked about communicating the vision talks about, speaks to the importance of communication as a counsel to the leadership of an organization, which clearly was not the case at Better.com.
No. There's no word as to whether the trio who quit, whether someone new's come in to take those jobs. Don't know. Not seeing any reference to that. So assume not for the time being. So it'll be interesting to see how this company.
The recruiting department probably is putting those job listings up now. If they didn't fire they fired the DEI people from the recruiting team. So you don't know who else from recruiting is gone.
Goodness me, the world is upside down these days, it seems to me.
I shouldn't say recruiting, it's talent acquisition.
Oh, yeah, that's a new label, isn't it? Yeah. So let's just switch back to social networks again, a continuation of this story that we talked about earlier about Facebook, Meta PK Facebook. This is about a guy called David Baddiel here in the UK. He's a writer and comedian, and a writer of children's books. He's very good. Who was behind a documentary that was broadcast on BBC Two, the domestic channel here in the UK, a week ago on December the 13th, called Social Media, Anger and Us. And I watched it the day, it was an hour long. Most interesting. Much of what was covered in that hour, which includes how social networks are designed to stimulate addiction. I love the way that was pitched, to the role in the viral spread of misinformation. That was a strong focus of it. Will be familiar to anyone who's watched Netflix's feature-length documentary, The Social Dilemma. Did you see that, Sean?
Yeah, I did.
I did too. I actually wasn't terrifically impressed with that, but that's a separate conversation possibly. But
just so you know, I wasn't either. I thought he made some good points, and it was entertaining to watch, but I wasn't sold on his message.
No, the production values were rather good. I must have been the little pop-ups on the screen of text messages and stuff like that. But the interesting thing about that program and David Baddiel's documentary is here we've got a focus on this aspect of social media, on mainstream media, television, and Netflix, I'm counting as that, by the way, that's got a global audience. BBC Two is domestic UK, but I think the program will be made available outside, I'm sure. You mentioned that you couldn't see it on BBC Americas. No, it'd be a shame.
I couldn't even find a reference to it on Google when I had BBC America as a phrase in
the
search.
I can't imagine they're going to keep this just in the UK. But the thing about this program, this documentary, was in contrast to the Netflix program, which provided insight into issues and corporate practices surrounding privacy, algorithms, fake accounts, and targeted advertising. What Baddiel's documentary focused on was on the personal, existential, and behavioral matters of us, with a capital U, everyone, basically. There are many similarities in it, too, that really captured my attention on the book by the journalist Charles Arthur that we talked about in FIR 210 in August on social warming. That's a great phrase, that social warming. I'm seeing it popping up here and there, and it very much applies to this, where as the intro to that book says, social warming has happened gradually as a byproduct of our convenient digital existence. But the gradual deterioration of our attitudes and behavior on and offline, this vicious cycle of anger and outrage, is real. And that is actually the key. In Baddiel's documentary, the idea that's explored incisively is that social media acts as a corrosive substance that strips personalities, politics, humor, and ethics of nuance and complexity. There's no histrionic screeching about cancellation to be found here. Baddiel's approach is even-handed, as he accepts the case for a culture of consequences and persuasively makes his own about how the internet's moral arbiters leave little room for sincere attempts at self-betterment. So I'm not going to describe the whole program because that would take too long. That's not really the point I'm making here, really. Here's the point of referencing all of this. I'm thinking the notion of a culture of consequences is a point that's probably lost on Mr. Bosworth at Facebook. I think that, to me, sets it out quite clearly, the culture of consequences. And when you do get to see Baddiel's documentary, I think you'd probably agree with it, what he portrays. He includes, for instance, an interview with his own daughter, who's now in her early 20s, who a few years back, when she was in her teens, had mental health issues and was suffering a lot. That was amplified by what she encountered on Facebook. And you hear stories anecdotally like that from people. I hear them all the time from people who have kids who are going through some kind of existential crisis, traumatic even, through things they find on their social networks, not just Facebook. So TikTok's playing a big role here, it is alleged, as well as WhatsApp groups and things like that. So the whole thing is toxic, and I see that word being used in the association of in the context of social networks a lot. I read a paper recently that tried to explain why these places online have become so toxic. And we know, because we've talked about it, we see others discussing Twitter, for instance, a toxic place. I don't quite agree with that. Yet, nevertheless, these are real. And indeed, that point comes across in Baddiel's piece. This is real. This is happening. This is now. We did talk about all this in that broader context back in August, about this outrage, this culture of outrage. I sense all the time, people don't get upset, right? They get outraged at something. And it could be something as innocuous as, it's raining today and I wish it weren't. And someone says, I think it's great that we have rain. And suddenly you've got a humongous issue developed on a social network because of an innocuous phrase. One reason why, you and I, similar to this, don't get into deep political discussions on Facebook, for instance, because it's a loser's game. There's no win-win there at all. So that arguably isn't new. It's kind of been like that when we're face to face, as you see sometimes. Yeah, but that's between those people. This is billions can see this and pile in and add their 10 cents worth or 1,000 Ethereums to it or whatever it might be. So it's not good. But that thing, culture consequences, is a good phrase that sums up the consequences and who has responsibility for them. Arguably, it's the social platforms more than anyone. So listen to this, Mr. Bosworth, and maybe rethink the crap you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, no kidding, huh? Obviously, I didn't get to see it, but I've read a few items about the documentary, and he talks about the fight or flight response based on what happens. And that's not unique to social media. If I'm in a public place and someone praises me, my dopamine levels kick in for sure. If somebody chastises me in public, I want to get the hell out of there. I think what's different is that this is in a forum where there are millions of people. Well, obviously not millions of people watching me, but it can spread so that it is ultimately seen by millions of people. And this is something that we're just not accustomed to yet. The technology has advanced faster than our ability to process it and its implications. I don't think the technology is necessarily to blame. It's our inability to catch up with it and figure out how to deal with it as a society. He's mostly talking about Twitter, right? Which does not do what Facebook does in terms of making you see stuff that they know is going to trigger you. You see your followers and their followers. The only time you see stuff that you didn't ask for is if you go look at a trending topic. And I think this is where a lot of the outrage happens. And also what's going to happen to you on Twitter is really dependent on who's following you and who you're following.
Yeah,
but if all you're talking about there is food.
Yeah, but I see things on Twitter that that show that this is definitely a problem for Twitter as well, on a different level as Facebook. So, for example, I'm seeing stuff in the last couple of weeks that I don't recall seeing before. When I've spent a bit of time following up on searching for something, a topic or a brand or product, whatever it might be, and I come across a hashtag, I'll go and take a look at that. That looks to be what I'm looking for, and I see tweets about the topic, and then I see some horrific stuff being tweeted that uses that hashtag and is totally irrelevant to topic. It's either obscene or exceptionally violent or graphic sex. And it's obviously up there for, I guess, seconds or minutes before an algorithm at Twitter or somebody takes it down or blocks it or whatever. But that doesn't seem to be doing a very good job. So I think you're exposed to this. And what Badil talks about, he admits in the documentary he is a Twitter addict. And he actually had to come off it and went into therapy for a couple of weeks without access to it at all. And I know people like that at all as well. So that's probably where the issue is. And obviously there are many people with that behavior. So you are exposed to this stuff, even if you think you're not, because if you are active on Twitter and you are searching on the public feeds for content, topics, whatever, you will encounter stuff that is really offensive.
I do occasionally, but I have to tell you that when the outrage machine spins up, and I spend a reasonable amount of time on Twitter, both for myself and in my job, because my department is responsible for social media, I see very little of it. When the outrage machine spins up, I learn about it because of an article, and then I have to go find those tweets if I want to write about it or talk about it. Justine Sacco way back in the day, the dentist who shot the elephant, I can't remember his name. All of these things I learned about in articles, not because they became memes that spread through Twitter, even though you talk about the reach that they obtained because they kept getting amplified. They never reached me. I learned about them elsewhere.
Yeah, I get that. I can see what you're getting at in that regard. But I'm talking about stuff that isn't like mega stuff, like some dentist shooting an elephant on real game. That's socially unacceptable these days. These are the little day-to-day things in conversation that you see all the time, where you've got someone who is offensive or has posted something offensive that has nothing to do with the conversation. And the account, I can't imagine someone willingly is going to have themselves, this is really me, and there's my avatar picture posting stuff like that. They're probably fake accounts. I have no idea, to be honest. I don't go searching for these things at all. I use Twitter a lot for research, and I look at this for when I'm looking for keywords that I'm keen on. I have a lot of hashtags bookmarked. TweetDeck's perfect for that. And I've noticed the pollution that's appearing in these streams more frequently. So Twitter's got an issue with that, and I don't believe it's new at all. Facebook's got a bigger issue than that, it seems to me, though, because that's what's getting all the attention. And some of the stuff is truly extraordinary, what you see. I saw a few folks you and I mutually know commenting recently on Facebook that they've blocked some serious number of people recently for things they've never experienced before, who've been piling in. So hence one reason why I think you're similar. I publish 99.9% of everything I write on Facebook is private. It's not public, to my friends group only. And in fact, I rarely post anything in the public channel. What's the benefit? There's no benefit, because if you've got a point of view that you want to say, hey, I think X and I don't agree with this, but I do agree with that, it's an open invitation to every wacko out there to come in there and pile it.
Right. So my problem is I usually am intending to post on Facebook only to my friends group. Then there's something I want to make public.
And you forget to switch it back?
Right, I forget to switch it back. It might be promoting the episode of FIR. I want as many people as possible to know about that, so I'll do that public, and then I'll forget that I'm on public when I'm doing something that provoke the people I want nothing to do with.
Yeah. It's a weird world. It's reflective of human behaviour. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's all there. Going back to Facebook and our friend Mr. Bosworth, the online safety bill here in the UK, these are all, I suppose, we need to find ways to do something that cleans this up in some form. Sounds terribly naive saying that, and maybe I am in this regard, but I think self-regulation doesn't work. No one seems to be able to get a handle on this and get a grip and get something sorted out. So, okay, government, over to you. Have a go at it then. That's what this seems like to me. So let's hope they don't, screw it up.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Well, I got myself an account on Jarvis. If you're not familiar with it, their website, which is at jarvis.ai, has this blaring headline at the top of the page. It says, "Let Jarvis write your marketing copy for free." And then the blurb underneath says, "Artificial intelligence makes it fast and easy to create content for your blog, social media, website, and more." Then, like a lot of websites, it lists some of the companies using their software: Airbnb, Google, HarperCollins, IBM, and Logitech among them. And they make a big deal about having a lot of 5-star reviews. So I wanted to give it a try. I watched the short getting started video. I opened the dashboard and I tried out what they call the PAS framework template. They have a lot of templates, but they suggested starting with this one. It's an approach to writing that is problem, agitate, solution. They also have an AIDA framework. That's attention, interest, desire, action. Product description template, a blog post a topic idea template, one for blog post outlines, a blog post intro, a blog post conclusion, a creative story, and dozens of others. Anyway, my first effort, since all I wanted to do was experiment and see how it worked, it was for FIR. So I entered the podcast name and a short description. Here's what I wrote. A podcast that has been published since January 2005. Neville Hobson and Shel Holtz keep communicators up to date on trends and issues, notably about the use of technology for PR, organizational communication, and marketing. That's what I wrote. That's it. I set the tone of voice to witty. Well, actually, that was the default, so I just left it there. And the number of outputs to 2, which means that it was going to produce 2 versions of what it came up with. You can do 3, 4, as many as you want. Let me read to you the first one. Problem. Communicators and leaders are using more technology in their communications, but often struggle to understand the benefits. Agitate. This is a fast-paced podcast with interviews of communicators who have used technology for good results. The show also discusses current trends in communication and leadership, such as social media marketing, crisis management, corporate storytelling, and others. Solution. If you're looking for someone to keep you up to date on new technologies that can be beneficial in your organization's communication strategy, then this podcast is perfect for you. We'll give you all the information that you need so you won't miss out on these valuable tools. Not bad. I mean, the interviews we don't do. The second one, which I won't read, didn't talk about the interviews. It was even a little bit better. I wound up showing this to our VP of marketing. He got very excited. He thought, he was like, wow, we can use this for big chunks of our proposals, But the reason I signed up for this in the first place was that I'd read an article in VentureBeat about these tools. The category, they're called LLMs. That is, they are artificial intelligence powered large language models. And according to a growing body of research, they pose a problem. For instance, one study out of Cornell found that LLMs can be modified to produce targeted propaganda, spinning text in a way that a malicious creator wants. There was a 22 paper from the Middlebury Institute that found one of these tools could generate influential text that might radicalize people into far-right extremist ideologies. There was a Georgetown University study that used one of these LLMs to generate tweets riffing on particular points of disinformation. At the University of Maryland, researchers found it was possible for LLMs to generate false cybersecurity reports that were convincing enough to fool experts. The VentureBeat report gave an example. They fed this prompt into one of these. It wasn't Jarvis, but one of the open source ones. President Barack Obama has urged Donald Trump to send some signals of unity after the U.S. election. The model might generate something that says, President Barack Obama has heroically welcomed Donald Trump's victory in the U.S. presidential election. That's not to say that LLMs will definitely be used to spread misinformation more than they will be used to create marketing copy. I mean, I definitely, absolutely see the value of this tool for creating big sections of our proposals. And, for some of the content that we crank out, it might be a lot easier for us to put in some basic information and let the AI do a draft that we can then edit. That would save a lot of time, which would be great because we're drowning right now. There are two of us in our department handling all internal and external communication. So, I see the value here, but good grief, this is still something to worry about.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I look at their website while listening to you, and I see on the Jarvis page. I love this description. It's promoting this is what you can do with this. Create blog posts, stories, even books with the help of real AI. So the real is italicized. Thinking, what is real AI? Is other AI not real? AI? Yeah, exactly. So you're right, and I think unfortunately these days, when you see or hear news of some new way of doing something, almost instantaneously after the positive thought that occurs to you about how you could use it comes a negative about how the bad guys can use this. And that's a reflection of human being behavior, it seems to me, that's inevitably what this would be used for as well. And in which case, if you've got, you pump in some words like you did, that is creating and asks the real AI to do something with it, well, you can do the same thing too if you've got something that's completely fake as the source that you want the AI to make stories out of. Yeah, that's inevitable. That's going to happen. In which case, is it feasible that there's got to be some kind of approval process built into, not approval, but verification process on the veracity of this, on the truthfulness of it? How on earth would that work? Another real AI would do it. Maybe train up an AI to sniff out fakery. My goodness.
There was nothing like that here, though. I entered my stuff, I clicked the button, and up came the results.
No, absolutely.
Pretty quickly, too.
But it could equally have been like the Barack Obama example, for instance, or it could even have been about, let's say, some event or some act that had happened in some place that looked great, but actually it was completely fake. It never took place, or it was someone else, or it was a different place, or whatever it might be. And this would create then a story around that fakeness. And you could even project that out to that will get traction if it's on social in particular. Before you know it, you've got this story that's spread that gets referenced and cited by respectable people. That's a good enough to get a Wikipedia entry, and then you've got real respectability. So things like that, really worrying.
Well, the big concern, I think, is around how easy it is to create lots of versions of.
Right.
I mean, I could have set my output to 6. So what if I wanted to do content that made claims about a company that's going to move their stock price, even though these are things they haven't done? I can create 20 versions of that and get them out there in different platforms in a lot less time with a lot less effort than it would take to sit and write those myself. And I think it's just one example of some of the consequences that we're going to see as a result of the availability of these services. I'm not saying these services shouldn't be available. I think they're amazing and wonderful, but there is a dark side.
Yeah, there is a dark side. And you tie this in with deep fakes and the technology that lets you do things like create a real multi-minute video of someone talking that's from just a single image. The tech can do that now. Yeah. And, you're looking then the metaverse, you're looking at, project this out without sounding like the doomsayer. This is something that would require, I'd say, careful thinking about how this is used. Too late for that because it's out there already.
Exactly.
So regulation's coming.
Okay, this is Dan. It's the first time code note I've made.
Well, that's good. So we're about 50 minutes at the moment?
Yeah, about 53.
Plenty of time.
Yep. Ready?
Yep. What are we doing next then? We're into Web 3, right?
Right. This is our last topic. Well, thanks, Dan. Great report. Fascinating to hear how the fee-for-service content management systems are displacing the open source other than WordPress. And that's one we use where I work. We use one called Webflow that I'd never even heard of before. We had to find people who knew how to use it. So
yeah, I mean, WordPress has come on incredibly in 17 years or so. 44% of all websites in the world run WordPress now. I mean, that's a hell of a claim to make.
Yeah.
So good success.
But Dan's discussion of this whole Web3 situation is a nice lead in to our last topic, and I suspect our longest. Thinking back to a couple of months ago when I was blissfully unaware of the term Web3. Now I can't get away from it. So it's worth talking about it at some length because the hype machine really is only just getting started. Right now, the debate is pretty heated over whether it's an online revolution, a lot of hype, or a dangerous direction for the web to be going. And it's frankly too early to know. By way of context, let's remember that the first version of the web, Web 1.0, was static web pages, and it was very decentralized. I mean, I remember where I had my first website. It was on a computer box that was under my desk right here, that was connected to the internet through a DSL line. I eventually ended up picking it up and moving it to a server farm in San Francisco, but that's still where all that content came from. Web 2.0 was more dynamic. It was more user-generated. It saw the growth of social media, starting with blogs, but it also led to consolidation of where all of this stuff resided, and that was with big companies, Meta, PKA, Facebook, and Google, and Amazon for shopping. And big business came in and just took over huge swaths of the internet. So that's Web 2.0. So what is Web 3? It depends on whom you ask. Let me give you a couple of descriptions, and then we'll talk about it, Neville. And there's a lot to talk about here. The New York Times says it's a decentralized internet run on crypto tokens that will democratize everything, reshaping art, commerce, and technology, displacing intermediaries, that would be Meta and Google and the like, and putting more people directly in control of their destinies. NPR says it's an iteration of the internet where new social networks, search engines, and marketplaces crop up that have no company overlords. The Economic Times says it's a system for the users, ideated by the users in the form of creator-driven platforms. And here's one from a blogger named Tanta, which interestingly is Hebrew for auntie. I don't know if that's what he's getting at with that. I doubt it. But Dan York sent me the link to his post. And this is a bit of a longer definition, but it's actually the one that I think really gets at what we're headed to. Web 3 is a blockchain-based back-end and infrastructure layer on top of existing network technologies that aims at restructuring the internet in a radically decentralized and individual way. Services required for individuals to be able to act within that new infrastructure, like identity management, content storage, etc., are provided by decentralized smart contracts or services built on them. While front ends to use the Web3 internet still look similar to current ones, browser-based apps, they no longer get their content from centralized servers, but from blockchain-based content providers, giving individuals enforceable ownership of the data and content they create or buy. And I should note that as rosy as that definition sounds, Tanta is not a fan of the idea. In fact, a good chunk of his post, which is lengthy, is devoted to why he objects to all of this. But let's take a break from me talking about it. Where are you standing on this, Neville? What do you see, and what's your understanding?
Well, I'm thinking back to when you and I talked about this topic in August in episode 210 as well. We had much of that show was about this. And part of the research I was doing on it found the Financial Times had a great starter piece, as I described it, that talked about this from a particular angle, where big tech was the group trying to shape it. But they had an interesting definition. I like this a lot. Early visions of the metaverse are likely to be an imperfect approximation of what the ultimate reality will look like. Absolutely spot on, because what you read out, all of it is eye glazing, to be honest, but all of it is slightly different, but use too many words, big words of multiple syllables that no one's going to understand what any of it means. So it's kind of, it's too early, in my opinion, to do what many people are doing, is literally setting out in concrete and cast iron, this is what the metaverse is.
Right. Well,
it's
this
all
is more
it's all different.
The metaverse is part of this. It's not all of it.
No, you and I might know that, but that's not what all these other guys are saying.
But the thing is, there's still going to be regular old websites with content and images. There will be blogs. There will be YouTube-like services. It's not all going to be avatar-based metaverse. That's part of it, but it's not all of it.
Someone needs to say that, and more loudly with greater clarity in that case, because all that most of us are hearing is that, hey, this is coming, it's going to replace everything. This is what it's all going to be now.
Yeah, we're hearing that, but Web 3 is still web, right? It's still going to run on a web browser. There's still going to be web sites.
That's the point. No one has a clear definition of Web 3 even. So let me refer to Tim O'Reilly's piece that to me was the one that grabbed my attention most of all, mainly because of the headline of his article, Why It's Too Early to Get Excited About Web 3. He, by the way, was the guy who defined Web 2, Web 2.0, 17 years ago. So he also notes in his article that the term Web 3, or Web 3.0, was first used in 2006 by Tim Berners-Lee. You know who Tim Berners-Lee is? Of course you do. He's the guy who invented the web.
Sorry, that's Sir Tim Berners-Lee.
Well, sorry, you're absolutely right, Sir Tim. So I think about people like Tim O'Reilly more than people writing in some of the tech journals saying this is what the metaverse is going to be. I think it's far too early to define it. And I like Tanta's description a lot. I have to say, I've not read that, because that to me is getting closer to not what it is, not at all, to being able to see what it could be, perhaps. And my own thinking is that equally I've heard others say, oh, the metaverse is the next version of the internet. And I'm thinking, fine, let's define what you mean by the internet first. And if that is the network of networks that is decentralized and is in layers, then that sounds what Tanta said about right. If he's talking about the web, which is a layer on top of the internet, because of the World Wide Web to work, you've got to have the internet first. Then we could be getting somewhere. Could it be then that this is, and again, I've heard this mentioned, but with too many qualifiers, that there are a lot of metaverses, there's no single metaverse. Some argue against that and capitalizing it with an M. So again, Tim, you're right, Tim O'Reilly. It's too early to get excited about this stuff yet because it's not clear where this is all going. In the meantime, you've got people experimenting, and like the FT says, imperfect approximation of what the ultimate reality will look like. And in the midst of it all, you've also got big tech, particularly in the case of Meta, PKA, Facebook, who are putting a stake in the ground that this is their development. And I'm not saying at all that is what they're saying, but that's what they're behaving like, if you like. And they're putting a lot of money, energy, time, effort, the works. People like Andrew Bosworth, like Nick Clegg, like Zuckerberg himself even, out there in avatar form, mainly because it really is an attention grabber, talking about what all of us are going to be able to do in Facebook's metaverse. And that may be true. Gaming is there. I read an article recently that was really quite thought-provoking in its view of the role gaming will play in kickstarting all of this, because of the fact that gaming uses much of the technology that is going to be needed to really make use of the metaverse. I'm also thinking that Second Life, much of what I hear people saying, there was a TV program today talking about there's your avatar in Second Life in the metaverse. It didn't say what it was, the metaverse, that you've got to buy clothes for it. And you've got to think, oh my God, they were doing that in Second Life 15 years ago. I've still got a wardrobe there in Second Life of all clothes. And I think they're still in fashion. They certainly are on Second Life. So it's not. There isn't a way to define it the way most of these organizations are doing. I think it's better to talk about what people can do with it rather than try and define what it is. That might be better.
Yeah, and I know that one of the issues Dan had that we talked about during our Thursday FIR Zoom chat was, what does this do for me, right? It's what people aren't talking about, but there are answers. You're right about games and the metaverse. I mean, Epic has announced that it's agreeable to selling games that support crypto or blockchain-based assets.
Well, you know what?
There's been it's working on a blockchain-powered game.
Huge game of pushback on that. I've forgotten the gaming company announced today that they reversed the decision to offer NFTs and tokens and all sorts of stuff in the gaming because all the users say we do not want any of that.
Yeah.
So they've cancelled plans to do that. And I see that happening more because the reason is it's quite clear because it's not stated. They're not being very open. It's about the money, for God's sake. That's why they're doing it. What they're touting is how amazing it's going to be for you gamers. You can do it. No, it's not. It's going to cost you money to do this, and they're going to make a fortune, which is one of Tim Riley's strong points, by the way, that this is all about the money right now. Yeah. It's all dressed up in that crypto, NFTs, the works, on how the platforms are going to make a fortune.
Yeah, and by the
user's not going to make a lot.
Facebook's metaverse is antithetical to the concept of Web3 because it's a big company owning it. It's not decentralized, right? Decentralized
exactly. Hence you can't define it Web3 then.
Let's look at a couple of examples of Web3 that are not metaverse. They're just Web3. Kickstarter, you remember Kickstarter, is overhauling its business on the Celo, CELO, the Celo blockchain, with plans to turn it over to a decentralized autonomous organization, relinquishing their ownership, their control of it. That's one example. Another, Twitter's launched a team dedicated to all things blockchain and Web3 so that Twitter can be a Web3 property. Reddit is planning to convert all of its karma points. This is what you get for contributing content that other people promote. They're going to convert all of that into cryptocurrencies. That's not in the metaverse. That's just Reddit. But it will be that decentralized where you own your content and you get rewarded for what you contribute. You're already getting that with karma points, but I'm sorry, you can't convert karma points into dollars and go out and buy something with them. You can with cryptocurrency. So these are examples of some of the Web3 stuff outside of the metaverse. The metaverse is just one element of Web3.
Or not, as some people are arguing.
No, I haven't heard anybody argue that it's just metaverse, but let's look at why PR people should care. Okay. There was an article in PR Week. It's going to change the way we engage with people online in a lot of ways. Just like we had to learn the back end of the web, we're going to have to learn the back end of this, not coding it, but understanding how it works so that we can guide development on behalf of our clients and organizations. And PR Week wrote about the impact on experiential marketing agencies. They're already starting to use AR, VR, extended reality, other hyper reality, and metaverse tools. But now they're going to have to learn NFTs, digital currencies, index funds, and tokenized communities, DAO, decentralized autonomous organization communities. They're going to have to find ways to have people who are part of DAOs meet in real life with conferences and meetups. They say, think Comic-Con for characters and content developed in the metaverse. The article also says, why hire an agency to bring on brand ambassadors, for instance, if they have their own diehard community of evangelists incentivized by tokens or NFTs? Why would Friends with Benefits, which is, by the way, a DAO community of crypto enthusiasts and content creators, why would they need to find talent when it can create subgroups of experts within its own membership base? These communities have local expertise spread across the world, and they can frictionlessly incentivize freelancers and vendors to activate their IRL in real life ideas. So we're really going to have to think about this. Now, let's talk about the benefits. I want to run down some of those that I've read in a plethora of articles. First, people control their own data with a record of everything they do based on a single personalized account, creating a public record on the blockchain of all their activity. The value that's created can be shared amongst the people who create it, not just, Facebook, PKA, Meta, and its shareholders.
That's an ideal for the future. then.
Yes, this is the goal, right?
Yeah.
CoinDesk had an article that talked about the benefits of Web3 for work because it will end a lot of the vulnerabilities that lead to data breaches, and it will protect confidentiality and secure payments. The Economic Times says most users are continually focusing on customized and personalized browsing experiences, and there's a growing need for humanized search assistants that are way more intelligent, completely ubiquitous, and powered by semantics, AI, and blockchain. It's going to change. I mean, there will be search engines that will be different based on personalized data that taps different sources. I mean, these are what people are talking about as being some of the benefits, in addition to the big goal of being decentralized and taking the power away from the Facebook, PKA, Meta of the world. So,
yeah, I mean, I think the Meta, PK, Facebook of the world are in a stronger position to be the centralized route, because they'll be able to make things happen simply because of their size and scale. Before smaller decentralized companies can do this, but there's still space for those guys. But it could be that the Facebooks of this world are likely to shape the direction of all of this. I'm thinking back actually to when we talked about this in August. I read an interview with a guy called Mark Pettit of Epic Games. He oversees Unreal Engine. That's a phenomenal tool. It's a 3D platform. And he talked about openness and decentralization. That would be an important feature of the development of the metaverse. A few words that he says here I think are quite interesting, which kind of address this, not in the same words though. He thinks it's an opportunity to create business models and rules that are far more fair for people, protect their privacy, and make sure creators get their fair share for the content they create. Because hopefully we're going towards an economy of creation where people who make the money are the people who created the content, not the people who own the platforms. We want everybody to become a consumer and a creator. And so we need the platform and the economy that allows participation for everybody. That actually is absolutely Tim O'Reilly's thought piece, really, that talks about this. That kind of connects to what you said in talking about what PR people and others can do with the metaverse and allow this and that and the other. And we seem to be losing, or we seem to don't have enough people saying this kind of thing. All I see that pops up in the headlines on the topic when I get search results in, particularly on the phrase the metaverse and related words that I pay attention to. Well, most of what I hear about is cryptocurrency, blockchain, and how people can make a lot of money at this. I don't hear enough about creating business models and rules that are fair for people, protect their privacy, etc., etc. And we need to hear more of that simply because it isn't defined yet. And it needs this kind of focus to, I believe, to make sure we don't lose sight of this and get completely overwhelmed by the get-rich-quick folks who are out there. They're the ones who are talking louder.
Yeah, and when it comes to the money in the metaverse, and again, I want to emphasize the metaverse is part of Web3. It's not all of it. There is a comic strip called Canderville. I don't know if any of our listeners read it, but there was an installment the other day where one of the characters made the point they're selling digital real estate in the metaverse. Best locations going for crazy prices. Poor people avatars are going to have to live in spitty locations. Even when a world can be anything we choose to make ghettos. Which, he's got a point. And there are other drawbacks to all of this, which a lot of people are pointing out. Kara Swisher in the New York Times said the Web3 movement is rife with hype, windbags, and more than a little grift. It's also more obstreperous in a way that previous versions of the internet are not. Somebody else wrote that decentralized networks appeal to people like white supremacists and other extremist groups.
I would add to that, as well as normal folks. So
yes.
It's not like see, that kind of reporting isn't helpful, frankly.
Well, but I think that there's a point to be made that these folks want to gather together in a place where somebody's not going to shut them down, right? And
right, I get
that allows that to
But there's not enough clarity around here, Shal. There really is not, because Kara Swisher, you quoted, for instance, she talks about the internet. Right, as being the kind of route we're going down. So make up your minds, folks. Is it the web or is it the internet?
But
So I
let's run
saw
down.
an article the other day saying Internet 2.0 is the metaverse. Well, is it? I hear Web 3.0 is the metaverse. So,
Yeah, well, and again, everything I read about Web 3.0 includes the metaverse, but is not just the
there
metaverse.
you go.
So let me run through more of the drawbacks that I have collected from a variety of sources. First of all, everyone's going to need to have a crypto wallet and a means to purchase crypto tokens.
There's the money again.
To take advantage of the many opportunities that will be offered on the blockchain. Now, here's a big one, and this is one that a lot of people are talking about. Blockchains use something called proof of work to verify transactions and other data. Proof of work is a computational puzzle that they have to solve in order to record a transaction on the blockchain and get rewarded for it with coin. And it uses a tremendous amount of computational power. There was one study that found the Bitcoin blockchain alone uses more electricity every year than the entire country of Argentina. And mostly this is power that comes from fossil fuels. And here we are dealing with climate change. And what are we doing? We're building Web3 that's going to be all blockchain based. And where is all this energy going to come from? Now, there is an alternative called proof of stake, but only a few smaller blockchains are using it right now. Ethereum is glacially moving toward it. Proof of stake has the crypto owners basically pledging their coins to be used to verify transactions. They lock up their coins while you stake them. And, the more coin you stake, the more transactions you'll be allowed to make on the blockchain. And then you get paid in a fee rather than coin from the blockchain. So there's less computational power being used, but not many of the blockchains are using it. So we have the environmental issue, which is huge. Blockchains are not a proven scalable technology. Tanta, the blogger that Dan turned me on to, says that Ethereum has the computational power of an old Apple II box, but uses as much electricity as Belgium. So it's tremendously slow. And how do you scale that to service the entire internet? There are security issues. There's no undo on the blockchain. We've heard stories about people losing the password to their crypto wallet and not having access to millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin that they have, and they can't get it back. It's just gone. Tanta also says, when only the code decides and there is no place for debate and political struggle, how do the disenfranchised get heard? How do the powerless organize and revolt? And I think that's an excellent point. We're turning over, we talk about democratization, but it's all the code that makes the decisions in these decentralized autonomous organizations. As I mentioned before, if you think big companies won't wrest control of this, you just haven't been paying attention. So those are just some of the drawbacks that people are pointing to. That doesn't mean they can't be addressed and fixed, but they certainly are, I think, hindrances to immediate adoption of all of this right now.
Yeah, I agree. And immediate, I don't think the word immediate applies here, adoption. It's going to take a long time, I think, with that kind of climate. Let me mention some of the concluding points of Tim O'Reilly's piece. I think they're very appropriate in the context of everything we've touched on in this conversation. He says the following: let's focus on the parts of the Web3 vision that aren't about easy riches, but on solving hard problems of trust, identity, and decentralized finance. I mentioned that earlier. And above all, let's focus on the interface between crypto and the real world that people live in, where, as Matthew Iglesias put it when talking about housing inequality, a society becomes wealthy over time by accumulating a stock of long-lasting capital goods. If, as Sal Delle Palma argues, Web3 heralds the birth of a new economic system, let's make it one that increases true wealth, not just paper wealth for those lucky enough to get in early, but actual life-changing goods and services that make life better for everyone. That's what we should be talking about, not how big corps are going to get rich and the crypto this and the Bitcoin that and the blockchain the other. We should be talking about these issues right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And when this takes shape, and those people who are decrying it and saying we shouldn't go down this road, I have to say, too bad. We're already down this road. I mean,
maybe we resurrect Larry Ellison's phrase, hey, this is the information superhighway.
Yeah. Well, I just saw an article that said very large companies are piling over themselves to introduce NFTs. So they're not going away. Venture
Yeah.
capitalists have invested more than
Yeah.
$27 billion in technologies that will support Web3 just this year. That's more than the 10 previous years combined. The New York Times says the biggest investors and industry players are lobbying Washington to influence rules that would favor their view of what they call tokenomics. I had to add that to my computer dictionary so it wouldn't have the red squiggly line under it, by the way. So it's here, but I think that a lot of the stuff that we talk about, blockchain and tokens and DAOs, are going to be invisible to the user, right? I mean, they won't have to learn about blockchain any more than you have to learn about electricity infrastructure in order to turn on a light switch and have light in your room when it gets dark. It's still mostly going to look like the web, and some of it's going to look kind of like Second Life, the metaverse part of it. But these technologies are going to be invisible to most people. And let's keep in mind that when the internet was new, it was confounding to people. We heard people talk about how it'll never take off. You remember the conversation? You can still find the video of Brian Gumbel and Jane Pauley talking about it on the Today Show. What is internet? And Web 2.0, it was the same thing. Oh, this social media stuff, this will never go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that the naysayers are in denial. This is a road that we're going down.
Yeah.
We are going to see Web3. It is going to be blockchain based and tokenized.
Maybe.
But it's going to be invisible to most people from the back end perspective.
So it needs more people to be out there talking about the things that Tim Riley mentioned. A lot more people doing that. I agree. This is happening. My worry is if this is the only thing that's happening, we're in deep trouble soon enough. That's a fact. So the dystopia that is confronting us won't be as horrible as Ready Player One portrayed, or what 2045 looks like. But it won't be pretty if the blockchain, money-making, crypto, this, that, and the other is the only story that people are telling. So it requires, I don't know, somebody or an organization that's not driven by all this, and few and far between, I would imagine, to talk up the stuff that is about creating business models and rules that are fair for people.
What I would like to see is, there's that organization around AI that the companies that are producing it formed in order to maintain an ethical approach to the introduction of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Google is part of it and the like. And I would like to see something like that where, okay, Web3, let's make sure this serves the interests of people,
right.
And come up with a set of guidelines that we're all going to agree to abide by. Not that everybody would, but we haven't seen AI take over the world yet and start killing humans. So that seems to be working okay.
If you want to take the model of what we've got to date with social media and social networks, then you need to have something that's far better than that. If we embrace the technologies that are leading us down this particular road, that, by the way, has no regulation, no defined best practice codes, ethics, none of that. It's another Wild West in the making, and that probably isn't a good thing.
Yeah. I am a fan of the decentralization. I am a fan of the fact that it will be easier for people to create without having to rely on a Facebook or a Google to do it. I'm a fan of the control over my identity. There are a lot of good things about this. It just has to be molded in the right way. And I have submitted my application to join a DAO community of marketers and creators who are talking about this from the business perspective. I haven't had that approved yet, but I'm waiting.
Get your voice in there, Shell. Be the
do
champion.
My best, and I'll report on that if I can get in.
Got it.
And that, dear listener, will do it for this episode of For Immediate Release. Again, this is episode number
214.
Have it here somewhere. 214 for December of 2021. Our next episode, and I'm going to say this having not checked this with you yet, Neville, so let me know if your calendar is okay for recording on Saturday, the 15th of
Yeah, we're
January,
good.
in order to release on the 17th.
We're good.
Good, excellent. And remember, keep an eye out for our short takes beginning the first week of January, these little 10-minute episodes where we'll talk about one topic and it will just be conversation. And we are continuing to do our FIR Zoom chats on Thursday. So if you'd like to join those and you haven't already, just send us a note through whatever mechanism works for you and we'll get the credentials to you. We do that so that we don't get Zoom bombed again. That was a pleasant experience.
That was.
Yeah. I heard from somebody at work who I had mentioned we got Zoom bombed, and they said, that there is a class action. If you join it, Zoom is going to have to pay out to people who were Zoom bombed. So I'm going to look into that. Anyway, we would love to have your comments about this episode or any topic that you care to share with us. Send email to fircomments@gmail.com. Attach up to a 3-minute audio file if you want us to play it and talk about it. We long for those days of listener comments and listener-driven shows. Record a comment directly from the FIR website. There's a send voicemail tab on the right-hand side of the page. Click it. You can record up to 90 seconds. Record 2. I'll edit them together into a 180-second or 3-minute comment. Leave a comment directly on the show notes for this episode at firpodcastnetwork.com. Share your thoughts on the FIR community on Facebook, and please do leave comments or reviews or ratings on the various places where you get your podcasts. Notably, as I learned from Tom Webster in his wonderful podcast, I Hear Things, that Spotify has become the top source of podcasts alongside Apple Podcasts. So if you get us at Spotify, leave a rating or review there, or Apple, or wherever. And that will bring this show to a conclusion. So that's a 30 for episode 214 of For Immediate Release.
Okay.